Welcome to another episode of History of Westeros podcast, a podcast dedicated to George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire book series, as well as HBO's Game of Thrones. Of course, as this is a TV discussion episode, the final one of season 4, we are focused on HBO's Game of Thrones most definitely, and we will, of course, be referencing some things in the books, but most of that will be covered in the companion episode to this, the spoiler version, which we will cover a number of topics as at the end of the season. As you might expect, there's a lot to talk about, a lot to look forward to, a lot to wonder, hey, what happened to that? Where was that thing? A couple of things in particular that I know a lot of book readers are maybe up in arms is too strong a phrase, but certainly there's a good bit of upset going around as far as two particular omissions, one of which is gone for good. The other still could happen. Depending on how they want to introduce it, if they're going to at all. But we'll get to that in the spoiler discussion that is more appropriately slotted in that space. So, a lot was covered, though. It was a big episode. There was a lot of things wrapped up, a lot of things set up for later, a lot of things that probably left you shocked or maybe wondering what was going on there, maybe some eyebrow raising. But quite a bit to cover, 66-minute episode. So we'll jump on a couple of things real quick before we get started with the material. First of all, thanks to some recent donators who have supported the show. Of course, that is the best way to support the show, but not the only way to support the show. Rating us on social media sites like iTunes and following us on Facebook and Twitter is always great. Word of mouth is probably the most important thing as far as spreading word of the show. So we appreciate anyone who goes to bat for us and tells their friends. To donate, go to historyofwesteros.com and click the donate button. There are, of course, as we exit the TV season and get back to the history topics, which require a lot more work, that your donations and support will really pay off and really get us to a point where we can get more episodes out more regularly, which is what we're aiming for. Now, I wanted to give a quick teaser as in terms of those history episodes and what we're working on, because the list is getting really big. And I just wanted to let you guys know how your donations will help out and what exactly they're going towards. Publishing episodes such as Sons of the Dragon, The Princess and the Queen analysis, and before that, Rogues, which is a short story featuring Prince Daemon Targaryen. That comes out, if you're seeing this episode on Monday, June 16th, that comes out tomorrow, Tuesday, June 17th. So, the TV show season may be over, but you've got that to, cover your Game of Thrones obsession for now. We, of course, have a history of the Westerlands topics to deal with. In particular, we're going to be doing an episode on the early years of Tywin Lannister. Some very exciting stuff there. Young Tywin Lannister, you've heard some stories, some bits and pieces, but you have no idea, unless you've read some of our reports from Con Carolinas, where we got some notes directly from George himself as he read from the history of the Westerlands in the upcoming World of Ice and Fire book. Really juicy stuff. Tywin, whatever you thought you knew about Tywin as a young man, it's a lot more intense than you may have been led to believe. The details are really exceptional. We're also going to do a bonus episode detailing our time with George. Specifically, we met him and got to hang out in his hotel room with just a few other people, and just wanted to talk about him and our experiences with him at the con. It's not something that it'll be a low content episode as far as Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire, but it should be a lot of fun. So I hope you guys will like that. We're also going to do an episode on the Night's King, especially with some of the revelations the TV show gave us, some questions that it raised. And we're not done yet. So many episodes we have working on. And we have a cat meowing in the background here. That, of course, is a Game of Thrones cat. Koja Mew is her name, and she is showing off her voice. Anyway, we're also working on a Battle of Ice episode. Battle of Fire is our biggest, most popular, most successful episode, and the Battle of Ice is a good prequel episode it's a good code name for people who don't know what we're talking about. If you've read the book, you know what Battle of Ice means. It's a code name for something that's going to happen at the beginning of the next book. And we're going to be working on that with none other than Jeff Hartline, who some of you may know as Brendan Beefish, who's got a great blog over at the Wars and Politics of Song of Ice and Fire, rather Wars and Politics of Westeros. And some of you have probably read his analysis. He's a great analyzer of the books as well as the show. So we're going to talk to him and work on that episode, and we'll be able to present that to you sometime this year. And of course, we're going to get back to religions and magic, which in one of the next ones we're going to be doing on that. We've got a lot more to do with the old gods, but we've also got a tournament, an episode on tournaments that we've worked on with listener Drew Hinks, and that has been on the shelf for a while, but we're hoping to finish that up and get it out also within the next several months. So, wow, that's a lot, right? There's so many episodes we have. At one point, someone who's not a super big fan of Game of Thrones, but is aware of our podcast, asked, don't you guys ever run out of topics? Well, that list should show you that we have never even, the thought of running out of topics doesn't really even cross my mind. There's just so much. I don't even know that when the series is done with, years have passed, I don't even think that then we'll be like, yeah, we've covered most of it. I don't know if we'll ever get to that, but it's pretty much infinite. So, a lot to look forward to. Specific shout-outs to people who have donated recently. Carmen A., thanks again. That's a repeat donator. We really appreciate the support there. Urban Flower Pot, thank you very much for your 7-themed donation. She requested a Stannis voice, so Lady Flower Pot of House Urban Flower Pot. We need a house motto for you. I'm not very good at my Stannis voice, apparently. I have to work on that. I hear Roy Dotrice's voice in my head, and I also hear Stephen Delane on the TV show. It's like 2 different voices at once. Also, Scott M. from Scotland. Also, David M. from Scotland, who we know from interacting on Twitter. Thanks, David. Also, Daniel D., who gave a recurring donation. That's a great way to support us going forward. Recurring donations are available through PayPal. Now, please let me know if you expected a shout-out and didn't get it, either because I forgot, somehow I missed your name, or if I said your name badly, you deserve to have your name said properly. Please let me know. I don't want to butcher anyone's names. My own name is Abishai Aziz Aldori, so I certainly have sympathy for anyone who's used to having their name butchered, and I, of all people, should be sympathetic to that. So give me the opportunity to correct myself if I did that badly. And if you don't want your name uttered out loud on the show, just let us know, say anonymous donation or no shout out in the message, something like that. No problem.
Top secret.
Top secret. Now, that said, a small financial contribution or a larger one can get your name mentioned on the show. So if you want a specific message, if you want us to say something to your friends, or if you want us to quote your own house words, if you've made something up for yourself, we'll do that. We'll follow you on Twitter if you like. It's a small thing we can do for you. It's kind of like selling a commercial space. We don't have any real commercials. Not saying we never will, but this is the version of the commercials that we have right now. Our version of ad space is selling shout-outs to you guys. So that's what we're doing for now. Speaking of house mottos, last week we asked some of you to give us suggestions for house mottos for Sean of House Beard here, and there was a very good response to that. So real quick, some of our favorite suggestions, some of which a few of you suggested. The theme was mostly existing house words that were changed to reflect Sean's appearance, shall we say. Ours is the furry. That's one of my favorites. Growing long. A play on Growing Strong from House Tyrell, of course. A couple of different Martell variants. We have unkempt, unclean, unshaven, as well as uncut, uncombed, uncontrolled.
I really thought there would be more allusions to my beard with all these. People have dirtier minds than I thought.
Now that one, the Dornish ones are particularly funny because Dornish people aren't big on keeping beards at all, so they would really stand out there. We have one of my favorites, the Golden Company changed to the Bearded Company. Beneath the beard, the bitter stubble. Size is everything, and we do not shave. Or our blades are not sharp. That's another one. So big thanks to Darren Tucker and Janine Stanley, also Michelle333, Parrish, David Stead, and anyone else who sent in suggestions for House Beard's motto. You're all winners. Now, let's get into the episode itself, because there was a lot to cover, and we've already spent almost 10 minutes on getting into that, and with our pre-show spiels there. So, oh, by the way, of course, I'm sure you've noticed Ashea is not here for this episode. She's been a lot busier than normal in real life, but she will be here almost certainly for the spoiler half of this episode that we will be recording and publishing probably about 24 hours after this one. So look out for that one if you are a book reader or if you don't mind being spoiled. So we start off with Jon Snow leaving the wall, heading out through the gate, basically picking up where the last episode left off. There's, of course, a lot of devastation. We see a lot of bodies, the dead giants, destruction, and all that. By the way, thanks to listener Stevie, who corrected me on the pronunciation of Kieran. I said Kieran or something like that. I guess I wasn't that far off. But once again, given my name, I should be looking these things up ahead of time and not pronouncing them incorrectly, not guessing at them. So Kieran is the correct pronunciation of that name. And he's a really great Mance Raider, isn't he? What do you think of Kieran as Mance Raider? We didn't get to see as much of him this season as I wanted, but he really pays off, even when he's only in there for a little bit. I think he really makes his presence known.
Yeah, I don't know what expectations are.
Right, you don't have the comparison to.
Right, but I'm intrigued by his character, and I don't know how much to give credit to the actor or the writing or the direction or whatever, but I wish he had more screen time. I want to know more about him. I want to see more scenes with him.
He has really great charisma. He really seems in charge. He's got great leadership charisma. That's why he made a great Julius Caesar in the HBO's Rome.
Ah, that's where I recognize him from.
That's right. Yeah, he pretty much dominated that role, and he was also in the movie Munich, and he got picked up in the bar and killed by.
Yeah, I remember that too.
They got revenge for him. Sorry if that's a spoiler. That movie's been out for a while though. You should have seen it by now.
And it's based on a true story. So.
Yeah. So he's a great actor, and we have clearly more to look forward to with him. He's not dead, so any character that isn't dead, you expect to see more screen time of them. So we have some things to look forward to with him next season. We'll talk about some of those possibilities in the spoiler part of this. But, of course, they have their drinking moment. They do a toast to Ygritte and to Mag the Mighty. Mag the Mighty, I like that they threw that name out there that was mentioned in the books as King of the Giants. And you could see how big and fearsome he was, lifting that gate the way he did with his adrenaline-fueled rage. And I do think that it's neat to see that they're talking about his bloodline and how Mag is the last of a line that goes back to before the first men. So that's thousands and thousands of years. So that should give you an idea, which is made more clear in the books, that the giants are dying out. There's very few of them left. And well, that just makes sense. Most people like Janos Slint and Maester Lewin and pretty much anyone in the South doesn't think they exist at all. So it would be weird if there were a bunch of them running around and you have people that don't think they still exist. So anyway. Now, it's interesting that this setup kind of paints Mance a bit more like a good guy. Don't you think the way that he's offering peace, the way that he kind of talks Jon out of trying to assassinate him, as he says, is that really how the Night's Watch works? Is that really what you guys are all about? A man offers you peace and you murder him in his own tent? That's not... I think that set him straight. I think that kind of made it hard for him. That really touched his conscience.
I wish I could remember a little better. I kind of want to go back and watch some earlier episodes. How clear did Mance make it to Jon in the first place that they're just moving south to avoid the White Walkers versus launching an assault? You know what I mean? It seems like Mance realized he was going to have to launch an assault on the wall to get past it. But I wonder if he did have to, or if he realized he had to. I wonder if he had some plan of negotiation in the first place. How different things would have been if the wall was better manned. What if there were 1,000 men there? How things would have gone? Would someone have still tried to negotiate this? What would Commander Mormont have thought? What if he was still alive and this army showed up? I wonder how things would have gone down.
Especially if they started by trying to negotiate rather than attacking and then saying, oh, actually, we just want a place in the realm. We want to get out of here.
And even if Mormont was okay with that, can he justify it? Like, what if it's a trick? Is it 100,000 people? What would Roose Bolton think of that? What would Ned Stark have thought of that if Ned was still there?
And what would the Wildlings think of that? Would the Wildlings follow Mance if he was like, hey, I'm trying to get us all admitted to the realm? Do they want that? I don't know that they do.
They followed him to the wall,
right? But I think he may have. He may not. He probably told them.
He probably pitched it to them that we're going to go conquer the South or get our revenge on them.
Or at least he didn't say fully what his plans were. Because he's, as you can see, he was kind of taking responsibility for them, calling them his people. He really cared about whether they lived or died.
I'm sort of assuming you know more than me. I don't want it to be given away, but I'm some of these things I wonder we might find out. I'm kind of curious how Stannis and Mance's conversation is going to go. At this point, am kind of wondering, Are they going to join forces? You know, maybe this will be what. This seems like such a right moment for Stannis to seize power, right? Obviously, there's more to come in this episode, but it all seems like it's things are going Stannis' way.
There's a huge number of men that are led by Mance, who is now in Stannis' possession. So you're right. If Stannis is looking for manpower, possibly this is
he's got a victory, a notch in his belt,
a bunch of money from the Iron Bank.
Yeah.
Things are definitely on the upswing, and you gotta like this is a complaint that I've seen that I somewhat agree with, though I expected it, to be honest, and that is that Stannis has been his goodness has been particularly downplayed by the showrunners. He's a bit more of a gray figure in the books, whereas he is harsh and unyielding and lacks mercy, but he does his job, and he has a lot of the qualities of being what a king should be. He's certainly the only one of the kings who is trying to protect the realm from this massive threat. The others don't even take it seriously. So you got to give him credit. And so that moment is really important, seeing Stannis come in and save the day and being a savior of the realm. But they didn't really present it this way. Now, I'm not trying to say this is how it should have been. The books and the show are their own separate entities. The show is what it is. The book is what it is. I don't think, for the most part, there's a few exceptions, I don't think the show is under any obligation to do what the books did. We like to point out these differences to keep them straight and to discuss the differences. It's interesting to see these differences. Sometimes the differences are just a matter of the venue, the medium of portraying something in print versus on the television screen. Some things are too expensive to show visually, and some things you can't do, like thoughts in someone's head. So there's just differences. Again, pointing out the differences doesn't equal complaining. That said, I wish they didn't paint Stannis as a bit of a villain. When he does ride up, we have this awesome scene of the soldiers riding up and in their formations and then their way they kind of hook and take Stannis' army out at the head. It's basically
Mance's army.
Mance's army. Yes, it's basically it's described in the books nicely as a serpent crawling through the north, and if the head is cut off, then the rest of the body won't know what to do. And that's kind of what they did. They attacked the head of Stannis' army. I said it again. The head of Mance's army and captured Mance. There's a lot more soldiers out there, but they were caught off guard. They're scattered. They certainly weren't expecting a large force of heavy horse and heavy infantry to arrive north of the wall. You can say that maybe they should have been more prepared for that, but really, it's just completely out of nowhere, Stannis' army showing up. It's just a huge surprise. So you can't exactly expect Mance to have been ready for that. He was expecting to meet with a few hundred more Night's Watchmen at most. And he knew that the power of the North was destroyed, almost certainly through some means. And not destroyed, but weakened severely through Robb taking so many soldiers north and so few of them coming back, south rather, and so few of them coming back. So, and the other main thing that paints Stannis as a villain is that the music, when he's riding up, it's like very dark and it's villain music. It's not triumphant music. It's not happy music. It's not neutral music. It's villain music. And Stannis isn't painted as a villain, but there's these little subtle things that are making him seem more villainous. Although he doesn't come off that way. He doesn't even get all pissy when Mance refuses to kneel.
I'll say that I interpreted it slightly different.
Okay.
Again, not knowing how things come in the book, but if I understand right, Stannis doesn't come like right after this truce has been negotiated, right? His arrival is not timed the same way.
It's pretty similar. There is no agreed truce. It's not really.
Does Jon go out and meet Mance?
Yeah.
Does Stannis comes after that happens?
During that meeting.
While Jon's out there meeting. So it's pretty similar.
It is similar in that regard. There's some things that were left out that may or may not matter, but we don't need to talk about that.
Well, to me, I didn't think
the basic stuff is the same, yeah.
I do find myself defending Stannis to people sometimes. He's a character I like. At a minimum, I think is interesting. If not rooting for him. You know what I mean?
It helps that he has Davos, who everybody likes, supporting him. And Davos is very likable.
I seem to remember pointing this out in another episode too. I appreciate that he listens to the council of his advisors. Like a lot of times, I think he gets attacked for just doing whatever, being spineless, not standing up for his decision. But I also think that he's being wise. He's doing what Tywin said you're supposed to do. He's listening to advice, reconsidering. He's not being stubborn. He's not being petty. He's trying to figure out the right thing to do. And if he changes his mind because he has new information, new advice, I think that's wise, not weak. You know.
Yeah.
Point is, I feel all this about Stannis. I think of him positively, but I find myself defending him to other people, you know. And so maybe the show is not presenting him well. But I will say I didn't think that music was so much villainous. It wasn't positive. It wasn't triumphant. To me, I thought it was tragic. I thought this was a tragic moment. Stannis, like,
interesting.
It should be a triumph for Stannis. It should be a triumph for Jon. It should be a triumph for Mance. It was like this. Just the timing of it made it a tragedy for all of them. You know, I feel like it was.
The Night's Watch are so weak now that they almost have to accept this peace offer.
Yeah.
Like, what are we going to do? Fight you? Are we going to?
They're all going to die anyway.
Yeah.
I feel like, you know, Jon was like making a bold, risky but correct decision to go out there and negotiate this. And Mance was saving a lot of lives.
Although he was trying to kill Mance initially. I think Mance almost talked him into seeing it differently.
I agree. Yeah.
But there wasn't time for that. Jon's like, peace, huh? Real interesting thought. Oh, boom, Stannis, you know?
Like, I think if Stannis had shown up the day prior, I don't know, but it probably would have ended up costing more lives, right? Yeah. Stannis would have, like, manned up the wall, fought off. There would have been just more and more people dying and dying. Probably eventually we come to this truce negotiation anyway.
Yeah.
Because I get the idea that the wildlings, like, they don't have a choice. They can either die fighting on the wall or die by White Walkers on the other side of the wall. They might as well try to fight, you know.
And that's the other thing that's, by the way, to interject, that's the other thing that Mance points out that's so important. He's like, look, you know what happens if you don't let us through? We're all whites. We're all zombies. You want to fight 100,000 wildlings? You want to fight 100,000 zombies?
Yeah.
We could be your friends and help you fight the zombies. And Jon starts to think, that's an interesting point. I hadn't thought about it that way. You make an interesting case. And then Stannis shows up. It's just hard. He doesn't even have time to think about it.
If Stannis shows up a day prior, at that moment, it's like this savior moment.
Yeah.
But I think it might have, in the long run, been worse off. You know, if he shows up a day later, he's not messing up this peace. He's joining in with it. You know what I mean? He might even facilitate it. He might go, and some of that might still happen. But I do feel like it was a tragic moment, you know, we'll see how it all works out, but it definitely wasn't a triumph for Stannis, you know.
Let me ask you a question. Did you see it coming, or did you make the connection that Jon would point out his father's role in trying to get Stannis on the throne, and saying, "Hey, look, I'm Ned Stark's son. My father died to try and, you know, for his honor and getting you on the throne."
That didn't occur to me specifically. I was even kind of anticipating Stannis showing up at the wall.
Right.
As this episode started, I wasn't thinking about it anymore. I felt like that might be getting set up, but when the episode started, I felt like, that's too long. How's he going to get the whole forces and across the water and land and siege and the battle of the walls? I don't know. But I guess the timing of what they're showing with some things might be happening in like 1 day span, and that story gets spread out over 4 episodes, whereas some other storyline being spread out over 4 episodes is 4 months, and they're just coming to a head at the same time. So I don't know how the timing of it all works, but I just, in my mind, felt like Stannis doesn't have time to get there. That's what I thought. So when he did show up, I was still surprised. Even though it was, I vaguely anticipated it happening, I started to think, well, maybe it's going to happen later, maybe after Mance Cross, maybe it won't happen after all. Like, oh, there, I guess it's happening right now. It seemed kind of sudden and surprising for him to show up right there. And so I hadn't thought too much about the connection of Jon to Stannis, you know. But once they were like face to face, I started to think about their relevance to each other, and I started to wonder: does Stannis know who Jon is? Stannis probably knows who Jon is. Stannis knows who Ned Stark
Certainly
is.
Knows now.
Does Jon know who Stannis is? Because he went to the wall before all this went down. But he learned his history. We saw the Stark kids learning the houses.
Semi-famous.
I feel like Jon would know who he is, and so I don't know. It's a neat meeting, and it's something I've said a few times that I've somewhere between hope and expect to happen is characters to be reunited, and And a lot of times you see it's like on this path to happen, and then they cross ways, and it never does. And sometimes they come together, and you're like, "Oh, this is so great!" Oh no, this is gonna go bad. We'll see that later. But
now, I thought there was some solid acting in this scene. I like how they had John looking all haggard and worn and just beat down. And I thought that was very convincing, and that's how he should feel. He's basically a man who's given up. He was basically prepared to sacrifice his life to try and it's a desperate ploy to take out the wildling leader, take out Mance, and so of course he's kind of expecting to die, which is why he didn't bring his wolf or his sword with him. There's no reason to sacrifice those things as well. Ghost would probably have given him away anyway. Ghost wouldn't be all keeping peaceful.
Wouldn't just
there.
be calm.
Ghost would probably be reflecting his inner turmoil and being growly and angry, and would probably have given away the game. So it's one of the few times Ghost isn't on screen that it's correct. And I don't complain about that. I don't mean that Ghost should have been in the show more, because I understand it's expensive to film the direwolf scenes. As a funny aside, something we talked about offline was this is the kind of show that could be adapted again 20, 30 years from now, maybe, when it's all said and done. Technology will be better by then. And I think we'll see more direwolves and dragons if that ever does happen, if they ever do it again. Certain things like that will be cheaper to pull off, and they won't be as limited by budget. Because as awesome as the show is, you can see a lot of times where they're just limited by their budget, despite the budget being big. I mean, this is not a small budget show by any means. It's one of the biggest. But it just goes to show how expensive these things are.
You know, something, just a thought I had as you were talking there. I don't know how it's presented in the books exactly, but apparently the wolves are around more often.
Yeah, a lot more. Yeah.
And that sort of makes sense that they're pets that would be with their owners, and also sort of important defensively or whatever. But but I can imagine in the book, you're getting things from the perspective of these characters. And so one line in the book will indicate that the dog is still around.
Mm-hmm.
But then after that, you're getting the character's thoughts, right? Yeah. In the show, the dog has to keep being there constantly. And I can imagine it being distracting. You know what I mean? They're trying to focus on the interaction between these characters, and on it's more difficult in the show to get thoughts across. And so the acting is more important. The focus on the face and her expressions and her body language, and trying to get a dog into all that really could be distracting from what's really relevant. You know what I mean? I think even with technology, I'm not sure how much better they could do.
Yeah, that's true. They could have it. They could just have more, more action in the battle scenes or something like that.
Yeah,
which would be cool. Not important, but cool. Okay, so let's change scenes here. We're going to go to King's Landing, where we have one of the Emmy contending moments that was submitted to the Emmy Review Board, and that is some of the injuries portrayed in this episode, the work that they did on Gregor. And what's been done to him, and how he's dying, and he has these gruesome wounds. They mention poison, that he's been poisoned with manticore venom. So clearly the Red Viper took precautions to make sure that even if he didn't win, he won. He got his revenge regardless. Yeah. So right now Gregor is in intense, debilitating pain. That's why the scene is introduced with...
Never mind serious wounds.
Yeah,
serious
right?
injuries.
Not only
I feel like he should be
the wounds
dead.
alone are killing him, but the poison is making him suffer greatly. It's not mentioned in the show, but just for fun, in the books it's mentioned that he somehow slowed the poison. They're not sure how.
Who's he?
Oberyn.
Oh, okay.
He did something to it. He thickened it somehow, intentionally, to make it work slower. to drag out his agony. So that just goes to show that he gave himself a good chance of losing the duel. He expected there was he knew in the back of his mind there's a strong chance that he might not win. Else why make the poison work slowly? Yeah. If he just stabs him to death and kills him there in the duel, there's no chance for the poison to do any work. He's just dead from his wounds. So this is a guy who was very thorough in his application of revenge. Was willing to go all the way.
There was a moment in the fight when he said, "Oh no, don't die yet. No, I need your confession and your suffering."
Yep. So it's quite possible he never would have dealt the killing blow. In the books, you can tell he was going to deal the killing blow because he was like lifting the sword to do. He had picked up Gregor's sword, was lifting it to do the killing blow. And Gregor shoots out and grabs his leg. And so it's pretty similar, but anyway, that's we don't need to talk about that. That's 2 episodes ago. But so Gregor is dying on this table. He's suffering badly. They're talking about milk of the poppy. As an interesting other aside, it's mentioned that Gregor is already somewhat addicted to milk of the poppy in the books because he has migraines. He has bad migraines, and that's part of why he's such a cruel, vicious man, is because he's constantly in pain himself, and that's just a factor of human condition. People in pain tend to inflict pain on others. That's just human nature. It's not, universal truth, but it's very common, very normal, and I like that even little kind of seemingly psychopathic murderous characters like Gregor have a reason for acting like they do.
Not an excuse.
Not an excuse, right. Not an excuse, but
it's
a
not
reason.
just random. He's not just randomly evil.
Right.
Yeah.
He's in pain constantly. It may be some factor of his, in real life you would say he's got some sort of gigantism. Like that kind of size is not.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
And that can be painful. So the milk of the poppy wasn't working very well on him because he's already so accustomed to it. And he's such a huge man that he has to drink more of it in the first place to get the effects. So, what do you think is happening here? Qyburn gets some really... This is a guy kicked out of the Citadel for doing things he's not supposed to do. And he's like, gives that Cersei this line. It's like, oh, he won't be... She says, will he be weaker? And he says, oh, no.
Oh, no.
He doesn't sound like... It almost sounds like, don't worry about that. It almost sounds like he's
maybe
saying...
he'll be stronger.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I didn't want to come out and say that, but that is kind of what he's saying, indicating. So, I obviously can't go into too much detail without being spoiler, but we can ask you that question and see what you think. So Sean, what do you think about this dying Gregor and Qyburn? Where is this going?
I kind of expect him to turn him into some sort of Frankenstein's monster. You know what I mean? Some zombie-ish, some mindless, droning, still like this massive Hulk of killing, but maybe... it doesn't seem like he has a whole lot of his own volition anyway. He's
not a bright man.
He just is instructed to go conduct battle and does, I feel like no one can actually be that simple. He has to have some sort of drive or desire or day to day. He's got to put his shoes on and eat food. He's got to maneuver through the world, so I don't know how much... how many people he's got walking around taking care of him, how much no one wants to go near him, but I wonder if he'll become, some zombie-ish, mindless, droning monster after this.
Certainly wouldn't be the first zombie. We've already seen several forms of necromancy, different types of barrack brought back to life, whites north of the wall.
Yeah. There's certainly a fantastic element to the show, and I even said at one point, a couple things I said is I thought if the Mountain fought Oberon, lots of different ways it might go, but it'd be interesting to me for the Mountain to just be unstoppable, for him to just cleave right through the Sandor cleaved right through Barrack's sword and his armor and his chest and everything. I thought that Gregor might do the same thing to Oberon, and there's a scene in Chariots of Fire where all these races, they're all these close call, last minute, hoping the good guy wins or whatever, and it's all the suspense and drama's built up. And one of the races, one guy just darts out in front of everyone and just blows them all away. It's not even close. In fact, this reminds me of when Indiana Jones, when the guy pulls out the sword and he's flinging it all around. Indiana Jones just pulls out his gun and shoots him. A little anticlimactic. I thought we might get something like that with the Mountain Oberon. The Mountain might just come out just kill him in the first blow. Oh Jesus!
Well, damn.
Nothing can stop the Mountain. But I still feel like nothing can stop the Mountain. I feel like he should have been dead. Minus poison. I feel like the wounds he took in that battle, if a modern doctor with penicillin was on the spot, maybe could have saved him. But in medieval times, and and I feel like he should be dead.
And you're not wrong. Qyburn's we can't... Or not Qyburn.
Pycelle's oh, he's done for. Sorry, nothing we can do.
All we can do is ease his suffering.
But Qyburn's no, this is a fantasy world. I got something.
I got something. And Cersei's all for it. She's like, yeah, all right, I'm going to let you give a shot. She's free rolling, basically. What can go wrong?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't save him after all. Okay. We lost nothing.
Yeah.
But I also like to see how Pycelle is losing more and more of his sway at court. Tywin was just kind of breezed him off, pushed him aside, and Cersei's not doing the same thing. Look, man, you're just a weakling. Take a chance here. Understand that this guy, if this guy wants to tool around with this dying man, who cares? Like, if he messes it up, what do we lose?
Yeah. Pycelle loses pride. That's what he loses.
You're right.
And potentially power, too. Like, this guy just being around. But Pycelle's lost power in other ways. Like, we saw how he's kind of treated smugly, but also, if you think about it, how many people were on the council before? You know, it was, when the show starts, it's Littlefinger, Pycelle, Renly.
Yeah.
And Ned is being added, right? Now is it. That was the council. Was Cersei part of the council, maybe?
She's sort of part of the council, but not. She didn't. She took more of an active role after Robert's death.
So, Ned dies, right? Renly off the council. You know, like, people on the the Pycelle's power is relatively increasing. You know what I mean? But then add Mace. Add Oberon, add whoever, whatever. The council doesn't even matter. Tymon's just gonna do what he wants anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Pycelle's power's already kind of like been taking hits, you know. And I feel like he's, I don't know, you know, I didn't hardly think about it at all, but I wonder how spiteful he might be. I wonder if I'm like, I'll show Cersei. Kick me out of my own laboratory. He certainly has character behind him. We've seen he has the capability for deceit, and he understands that it's King's Landing.
For being gross, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go move on to Cersei and Tywin. Now, as with many episodes this season and all seasons, the title often has multiple meanings. This is certainly one of the most meanings that an episode title could have. Of course, the children refers to the children of the forest. It's a big reveal. But the children has so many meanings in this episode. I feel like we'll probably miss a few meanings because there's so many. The first we'll just go through as they come up. We'll go through them.
It's almost so broad that, like, if you apply the children to the Stark children, where we start off with Jon, you know what I mean? Like,
and so in this example, we have Tywin's children. We have Cersei refusing to marry Loras, and of course, it's funny to point out that this episode occurred on Father's Day. And Tywin got all kinds of lovely Father's Day gifts, some of which became moot. You know, the gift of his daughter telling him that she's been sleeping with his son. We don't really have time to process the meaning of him figuring that out because he's dead 30 minutes later. Yeah. So that would have been a huge reveal if it were for the fact that he dies later. So, quite the gift. He gets outed, you know, by his own kids and then killed by his other kid. And, not Tywin's finest moment. And, of course, we'll talk about Tywin more later. But Cersei just kind of stands up to him. It's one of the first times that someone's really stood up to him. Tyrion stood up to him, of course.
Jaime stood up to him, too?
Jaime did stand up to him, but this was... Jaime kind of folded. He stood up to him, but ultimately Tywin kind of got what he wanted. Jaime gave Tywin what he wanted in the end. Tywin didn't get it because of Tyrion's changing the plan inadvertently. Yeah. But Jaime did kind of yield to Tywin's wish to leave the Kingsguard.
I do almost feel like when that scene happened, that was like second episode, much earlier in the season. Third episode?
I don't remember, but yeah, very early.
I felt like Tywin let that happen too easily. Like, in fact, it had to be the first episode because
you're right. It was 2 swords.
He gave him the sword.
It was 2 swords.
And he says, I feel like Tywin wasn't done with that. Does that make sense?
You're right. It wasn't that he gave it too easily. It's that he had more moves to make.
Right. But and that was what was key, I think, about this scene here. Cersei's like, look, I'm done with your stupid story. I don't care what happened before.
Yeah, you're stupid.
I'm standing up to you now. Yeah.
I don't want to hear your story about the time you won. Yeah. That was such a fantastic line.
Yeah, your smug
story about that time you won. And it's so perfect because the first scene we ever see Tywin, which is butchering a stag with Jaime in season 1, he says the same kind of thing to Jaime. He's like, oh, go ahead, say something clever. Yeah, go ahead and say something clever about how you whatever. And she's throwing it's one of his last scenes, and he gets that thrown in his face inadvertently. And by Cersei, and I think it's amazing. I thought it was amazing. It's not in the books at all. There's no outing of them in the books at all. There's no, we've been fucking. There is none of that. That doesn't happen in the books at all. It could happen off screen, but Tywin dies without ever being truly confronted by that.
I really liked the scene too. It was really good the way Tywin just, you couldn't tell if he wouldn't or couldn't accept it. Like it's like how can he not know? But I think the way he cannot know is that he chooses to not know. He suppresses it. He just can't accept it. He just can't accept it. You know,
his pride is just too overwhelming.
Even to the point where I feel like his overwhelming evidence, he still just isn't accepting it. Like, partly because even if it is true, doesn't matter. I'm going to act the same way anyway.
Yeah, he doesn't have to believe it.
Right. But at the point when she's telling him, and he still won't accept it. He literally says, "I don't believe it."
I don't believe it. Yeah, just a matter of fact. Like,
you can say it if you want, but I'm just going to keep acting like I am anyway.
And I like how he stands there after she walks away, and he's just standing there. He's still got the key in his hand. He doesn't move. He's kind of like, his hand is kind of moving. It's like a quirk, like a body language quirk that you wouldn't expect to see from someone so in control. So it does seem to be getting to him a little bit, but we don't really get to see how it plays out because he's dead a few scenes later. But I thought it was a great scene, and I love pointing that out because it's just a big thing for book readers to complain about the show. It's just a thing. It's never going to stop. I'm not a big complainer personally. I do complain sometimes. I like to point the differences out. But I also love to point out the things the show does that the book didn't do. And this is one of them. That scene, this is another example of a scene that didn't happen in the books. That's just awesome. I loved that scene. I thought it was great. It was well acted. It was right on. I felt like, I was a fist pump kind of moment. And, we got to give credit where credit's due. And the show did a fantastic job with that scene and several others. Now, a scene that is somewhat similar from the book, something that is in the books and is relatively similar to the way it's carried out, which is and of course really speaks to the whole theme of the children.
Yeah.
This scene with Daenerys. Both of these moments in this scene where she is confronted with the reality of what she's done. It's not so simple to just free the slaves. It's not so simple to just have dragons. The teacher, a very well-spoken man who talks about his life and says, "Hey, I had a great life as a slave.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but we did skip a scene.
Oh, did we?
Because after Cersei
you're right.
she goes and talks to Jaime.
I'm sorry. Let's back up and do that.
I was going to just go because I didn't really have much to say about that scene until it occurred to me. It's like, you know what? Jaime still raped her earlier, and I don't know if she goes and seduces him here, and I don't know if that makes it all okay now. I don't know.
Well, I think that the thing is that I don't want to start a rape discussion, but the bottom line is whether or not it's a rape or not in Cersei's mind is what matters. As far as how she's going to behave.
Yeah.
So clearly she didn't see it. It's just the way their relationship is all about power dynamics, and rape ultimately is, as much as anything, perhaps more than anything, it's about power, about exercising power. And Jaime and Cersei have always been one-upping each other in power. So she didn't see, I don't think Cersei felt like she was raped.
Yeah, I was
Forget my opinion on it. Forget whether I think it's a rape. Just Cersei as a character didn't see it that way. We can make our own moral judgments. We've done that, and we've covered that in another episode. We don't need to go back there. But I don't think Cersei saw it as a rape, and so her behavior is certainly colored by that.
Yeah. I didn't mean to drudge up that whole thing.
I know you were.
But I did want to point out that I feel like this is the closest to addressing it the show has come.
Yes.
And we just skipped right over the scene. And so
that's funny. That's a bit of funny irony there, too.
I wanted to at least touch on it for a second because I feel like it's... Because that's what I thought. I remember when that scene happened way back when. I was desperate to know. Did Cersei have a point of view in the books? What was she thinking? Oh, she didn't have a point of view. Well, I guess we don't really know, But it does seem to me like she's still...
Well, it is
connected to Jaime. She cares about Jaime. She's standing up to Tywin for the sake of Jaime.
She still loves Jaime.
At least partly. She said Tommen, but...
Yeah.
She said Tommen before she said, "I'll burn his house down." How are you going to do that? Because of Jaime. We wondered before when she was talking to Oberyn, how much does she really care about Tommen and Marcella? I wonder she's more selfish about Jaime. Like
she showed that she cares. She does care about her kid. She is a mother. She's evil in a lot of ways. She's good in some ways too, but she is a mother. At the bottom of it all, she is a mother, and she showed that to Tywin. She's like, look. My claws are as long and sharp as yours. My children matter. These are my children, and and it's my life, and I choose. And that what she said to Jaime, we choose who we love. We choose who our family is. I don't choose Tywin Lannister. I don't want to talk about Tywin Lannister. Yeah. I want to talk about you. I want to talk about me. I want to talk about Tommen. That's what matters. And later, that's going to come up again because Jaime it's almost like Jaime took that to heart, and he chooses Tyrion.
Yeah. I didn't think that's how you just said it. Yeah,
He chose
that's a good
Tyrion.
point.
He's like, I'm gonna let I choose Tyrion. I choose to keep him alive, and they did to stick with this kind of backing up things that we missed in this Tyrion, Tywin, Cersei Jaime scene, which is that they did miss an opportunity to reference the rape because not referencing it as a rape, but to reference the power dynamics again, because in the books Jaime didn't want to have sex in this scene.
Oh, really?
Because he's
mad about Tyrion.
Not exactly,
No?
but that's
Okay.
part of it. But he also has qualms about having sex in that room. It's the it's the Kingsguard, like it's their room,
yeah.
you know. And
How
he,
can
on
you have
the
qualms
table,
about that if you could do it right in front of
exactly, exactly. It's a little hypocritical, but so Cersei's like, look, we had sex in front of my dead son in the Sept. You're gonna have sex with me here, buddy. You know, I don't think so. You are not gonna be that big of a hypocrite. So. I thought that was nice that Cersei kind of turned it around on him. She got her power back in a sense, and I think that was good to have.
We find out later, and even more so. I guess I should wait till we get there. But that's the main thing. My mind's been stewing. I was like, time has gone. Cersei's queen. He's not the hand.
Yeah, the
Who's she gonna make be the
certainly
hand?
the fallout from Tywin's death is going to be something we'll have to talk about later this episode. That's a big thing. Like, he was basically in charge.
Yeah.
He's the real power behind the throne. There's certainly other people manipulating things and pulling strings, but he was the number one guy, and that is a big vacuum. So anyway, back to Daenerys. I skipped forward to that by accident, but now we can get back to it. So the teacher slave talks about how his life was and how, you know, this new order that you've brought in, you know, thanks, Queen, but I'm too old to make this change. My life was so much better. You've made my life worse. Freedom is not worth that much to me. I'm an old man. And I like how they cut to Barristan and showed his face and was like, look, this new order that you've created, us older people, we can't adjust to that. My life is what it is. It's too late for me to change and do something else.
Yeah.
I had a comfortable life. I had meaning. I was teaching people. I was educating. That's
I had a
that's
roof
important.
over my head, food,
Yeah.
and
I'm not living in squalor. Your freedom made me free to live in squalor. I don't want that. Like, I can't.
I'm not contributing to society anymore. I'm not being a teacher. I'm not safe. I'm not.
And you can see Dany get a little angry about it, but because she's like, look, to her, freedom is more important than that. But she's starting to see that freedom is not number one to everyone. If you're a slave being whipped every day, I can understand why you would want to do anything possible to break free of that. Why death might be preferable. But if you're this old guy, you can't make that claim. You can't say, as a human being, that you know what's better for another person.
I haven't never thought about it until just now. It's kind of neat, but slavery is a pretty broad term. It ranges within. You know, it's not. Every slave isn't being whipped and beaten every day. You know, not having your liberty isn't the same as being whipped and beaten. You know?
Yeah, and there are people that basically live their lives as slaves that don't have that term. That are basically not free to make their own decisions because of pressures put on them. It's true for a lot of celebrities. They can't do certain things or politicians. They can't do certain things. And I'm not saying we should feel sorry for those people. I'm just saying that they can't they can't make decisions that we normal people can make because everything they do is seen by millions or thousands of people, and they have that matters, you know. So it is a really interesting moral conundrum, this whole issue of slavery and freedom. And it's one of the great things about Game of Thrones is that it's able to get in there and show these nuances. It's not just a matter of, I freed the slaves, I'm a good person, period.
Even a thing that's like
doesn't work that way.
A generally positive change or a good thing to happen, sometimes in a short term, the upheaval for some people is going to be bad. Like, overall, the world is immensely better for the existence of cell phones. But think of all the people that lost their jobs. It used to be like, you know, those 50s operator, like unplugging little things, you know, like those people all lost their jobs.
Yep.
I don't think we should have stuck with those old phones just so those people didn't lose their jobs. They need to find new jobs. In the meantime, some of them are going to have their lives are going to suffer. But everyone else has amazingly improved their lives. You know, all the people in the city are free, but a few of the people that are free are now starving, you know, and like, not that she shouldn't have freedom, but she's got to account for this if she wants to be a leader.
Exactly. And so it's a great moral conundrum. I like that they're addressing that. I'm glad they didn't cut that from the show. It's really important. I think it will continue to be important going forward, and we'll just have to keep an eye on that. Obviously, Daenerys is learning that ruling is not simple. She needs help. She doesn't have a lot of advisors who were good at handling this kind of thing. Jorah's gone now.
Yeah.
He was one of her main advisors. Barristan is a Kingsguard. He's not politically savvy. He's good at protecting her, keeping her safe. He doesn't know how to rule a city. He doesn't know how to deal with freed slaves. That's not his... Missandei doesn't know that. Dario doesn't know that.
I assume that Barristan would know better than average, though, because he's been a witness to kings doing it for his whole life, you know.
Sure.
And he has given her some advice, but certainly she doesn't have the wherewithal that Tywin does to get things, you know, to manage things. You know?
She doesn't have any sort of like go-to advisor that she can rest. She say, "Hey, I need some wisdom. You know, hook me up with some wisdom." There's no one that's even really close to that. So. That's something that she seems to need and that she's dealing with, she's struggling with. So the next part of the scene, which is really kind of heart-rending, I suppose. It was a really well-acted scene. This man is coming up, and I think it's actually made more heart-rending by the fact that he can't speak common tongue. Now you're hearing his anguished voice. Translated through Missandei, who's trying to keep her voice flat, but she can't help herself because it's just so terrible what's happened. They all kind of realize. Dany's got that cold look in her face, like she's trying not to be emotional, but this is the thing that touches her more than anything. She's specifically wanted to stop this exact thing, the murder and torture of children. Not that the child was tortured, but burning to death is probably pretty awful. And the music, of course, adds to this moment, making it all the more emotional. And Dany is just trying to keep it together. And you can see that she's asking questions of Missandei afterwards. And she's asking these questions in a very flat voice. How old was this child? What was the child's name? You know, it's like she's forcing herself to suffer. Kind of like she forced herself to see those children nailed up on the posts.
Yeah.
She's not going to... This is her way of dealing with things. She feels like it's unjust to not emotionally deal with these horrors, especially because she takes so much responsibility for it. What's she going to do about it? For her only immediate answer is to lock up her dragons, which also, somehow, seeing these murderous beasts thrown into a cavern and locked up, it's somehow, partly because of the music again, and Emilia did some great facial acting, it's sad.
Yeah.
They're screaming for their mother, and they didn't do anything wrong. It was their big brother.
You know, it's not that they aren't murderous beasts, but it's not totally fair to call them that. I think any house cat, the cutest little, it climbs your meow, it purrs in your lap, and you pet it. If it was 14 feet long and 800 pounds, it would kill you. It would just kill you. It wouldn't, even if it wanted to be nice to you, it would accidentally kill you. And it would need to eat a lot of food, and it would have to do a lot of killing to eat that food.
Yep.
And I think this is also an interesting moral quandary. I don't know how intelligent these beasts are. I don't know how much she loves them. They haven't done a lot to develop their personalities. You know, I sort of assume these dragons have personalities, but even if a cat or a dog has a personality and it gets blown up to 10, 14 feet long, 800 pounds, you just can't have that running around in the world. It's just too dangerous, you know? But does that mean you should lock it up? Kill it, especially if it's a weapon in your arsenal that you kind of need as part of your power.
It's a totally unique situation. No other dragons anywhere. No one else has to deal with this.
I'm attributing some sort of, our ability to relate to pets to these things, but another thing you might compare it to is nuclear weapons.
Exactly.
You know?
Yes.
They're these super powerful things you have, but they're super dangerous, irresponsible to use. And what are you supposed to do with them?
They're a huge weapon. They're also a huge power source.
Yeah.
And in the equivalent here is they could be a source of peace. Who's going to go up against the regime that has dragons to defend its power? No one could stop that. So in a way, it keeps the peace. On the other hand, as we see in the books, what if too many people have dragons? Then they get to fight each other with these overpowered weapons that can cause mass destruction, just like nuclear war. Yeah. You know, nuclear war is not something that we think about as a real possibility these days. Not as much as, we do. Not as much as we used to. People in the 80s, and the 70s, that's when it was a real, because it was new. And the Cold War existed, and there was a lot of, people thought that it could really happen. Not saying it couldn't still happen, but it is good to draw that modern comparison and to show that it does have a place in our modern psyche. This whole concept of a weapon that's perhaps too powerful for anyone to have, but yet it exists. So any thought of should it exist is moot. It does exist. We have to deal with it, and no one's going to get rid of it. It's not going to. The world isn't going to all of a sudden agree to get rid of nuclear power. Nor now they could the world agree to get rid of dragons? Maybe, but that's not going to get rid of them. Agreement will not kill those dragons. So this is, of course, a huge tie-in to the episode title again. This whole scene was every part of these two Danny scenes. It was filled with references to the children. We have the children, as in the children of these slaves, the slaves that were being taught, the freed people being taught by this teacher, who those children, and his importance to the children. Then we have a child being killed by the dragon. Then we have the dragons, who are her children. She is probably barren, according to Mary Mazdur. They're her children, and perhaps the only children she'll ever have. And she has to lock them up, and it kills her to do it. The tears streaming down her face were both her own anguish at having to lock up her children, and at the thought of the child that had died because of her children. So it's a great conundrum. It's a classic Game of Thrones conundrum, moral conundrum. There's so many of them, and this is just the latest of them. George loves to do that. I'm glad the show was able to capture this one really well. We weren't sure this would happen. This technically, that scene happens in A Feast for Crows. I'm sorry, in A Dance with Dragons. And so we weren't sure it would happen yet. But it did, and we're glad it did. They did it really well. So I think we're ready to move on to the next scene. Is that right?
Yep. Go
back
up
to
the wall.
Castle Black.
Yep.
We have Maester Aemon saying funeral rites. I like that they kept the funeral rites very similar to the way they're done in the books. They talk about all the different places they come from. They speak to some of the Night's Watch vows. There's lots of shots of the dead people. We see Pip and Gren's corpses and several others. By the way, mentioned something that John mentioned to Stannis, very important, that he's burn all the corpses.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. Burn all of them. He was like telling him in no uncertain terms, like, listen to me. I mean, he invokes his father's name. He's like, you know what else my father would have done? Burn all the bodies. Sir, don't take that lightly. Burn all the bodies. And we get to see perhaps a preview of what's to come. You can see now that Stannis and his people are mingled with the Night's Watch. You see Melisandre give Jon this long look.
Through the
fire.
What
is that all about?
Yeah.
You got any ideas for that?
I will say something that occurred to me this episode is there have been a lot of fires in the ice.
Yes.
In this season, off the top of my head, we had them burn down Craster's place, and then we had Mance set the fire, and then we had Ygritte being burned, and then then Melisandre shows up. Usually when I think of A Song of Ice and Fire, I think of Jon and Dany. I'm like, well, Jon and Melisandre? Is Stannis part of fire? I don't know. It's
So that's a developing situation. We'll talk a little more. Shay and I'll talk a little more about that in the spoiler parts.
Melisandre telling Selyse that Shireen needed to come with them. We saw them there. We saw Selyse, Shireen, and and Melisandre all there with Stannis and Davis. I also something I don't quite remember. Last episode, what happened to Alistair Thorne?
That's a bit of confusion. Yeah, we should address that.
Yeah,
I don't believe he's dead. Ashea thinks there's a decent chance he's dead, and I admit that that's a possibility. It seemed like he took a leg wound. It doesn't seem like that'd be fatal, but he's not in this scene at all, neither as a body or as a bystander.
Yeah, I actually started wondering if I felt like he was killed. I didn't think about it actively because there's so much action happening left and right. But then I think during the podcast, someone mentioned that Alistair was injured, and it made me think, wait, was he injured or was he killed? We didn't. I feel like not showing us that one way or the other keeps the window there for him. So, except why didn't they go through this whole episode? Not even a mention of him.
Yeah,
and it made me wonder.
They have Tormund talk about how Maester patched him up.
What about? So I don't know if they're saving something big for Alistair. Maybe he becomes a more significant character. Maybe he becomes one of Stannis' right-hand men or something. Or maybe they're playing it. Maybe they don't know what they're doing with that character. Maybe that actor said, "I'm quitting after." And maybe they have to keep their options open how to handle it for the next season. I don't know.
Well,
it's something I'm curious
One
about.
thing to remember his old loyalties. The reason he's at the Wall in the first place is because he fought for the Targaryens when Robert won the throne. So he probably doesn't have any loyalty to Stannis because Stannis fought for Robert also. So he fought on the other side. He's a Targaryen. I was a Targaryen loyalist, which also explains a bit as to why he hates Jon so much. Because he's the son of Ned Stark. Ned Stark was one of the main adversaries against the Targaryens. Ned, in fact, was one of the first people to King's Landing to sack the city. So, Sir Alliser, his living political allies there aren't very many of them really.
Yeah.
If Dany were to show up and he would still be around, maybe he'd be all for her or something. But that's, if anything like that happens, it won't be anytime soon.
In the meantime, I don't even know if he's alive.
Yeah,
if
exactly.
His character's still part of the show. But.
So that is certainly an interesting thing to keep watch on. We don't know how they're going to handle a lot of this, but a lot of things to look forward to. Stannis, Jon and Stannis, Jon and Melisandre, Selyse and Jon, perhaps Selyse at the Wall, Shireen at the Wall. A lot of stuff to look forward to there. Hard to say where it's going to go. And of course, Maester Aemon himself, a little of him. He's important as well.
I like when Aemon gets.
He's featured. A Targaryen. I mean, that's important. So I don't know that there's much else to talk about with that scene. We certainly see Tormund immediately after, and that's an interesting situation as well. What's going to happen with him? Jon is kind of non-committal about what they're going to do with him. He's like, we're not going to torture you. That's the only thing he's like really clear about. He's like, yeah, they might execute you, but we're not going to torture you. And Tormund gets him to admit, he's like, look, Stannis is in charge now, isn't he? Your king's in charge here now, isn't he? And he's like, but you're not going to kneel to him, are you? You spent too much time with us. And Jon doesn't really admit it, but I think he kind of didn't deny it. And then Tormund tells him, Grit deserves a better burial than this. She's really of the true North. And
I thought that was I don't know, ironic. He's like, oh, the dead can't hear us anyway, you stupid Southerners with your rituals. Make sure you bury her properly. Then wait a minute, what do you kidding? It doesn't matter. If it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter, right? I don't know.
So
where do we go from there?
Next we go to Bran and his crew.
Yeah, that's right. Oh yeah, this is a fantastic scene.
Fantastic, literally, as in full of fantasy.
Multiple meanings of the word fantastic here.
And multiple meanings of the word children here as well.
Yeah.
These are all children, essentially. Mira and Jojen are in their 20s, basically. Maybe it's kind of unclear how old they are in the show. They're a little younger in the books. But they're effectively children. Bran is basically a child still.
I didn't think they were even 20. I thought that they were teenagers.
Okay.
I thought they were like 17, 19.
And, of course, the Children of the Forest reveal. That's huge.
Yeah.
Comes out, and there they are. There's a child. I thought the scene was maybe a little too... I don't know about maybe. I thought it was too stylized, too fantasy. Like I said, I don't really like to complain, but I think that this was directly against George R. Martin's vision. And when you change something, it's a change. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse, sometimes it's just whatever. But George is on record as saying he doesn't like the thought of wizardy stuff where people can just, I think he even used the example of talking about Lord of the Rings. There's more overt magic in Lord of the Rings, but even Gandalf stands toe-to-toe with the other soldiers and fights with a sword. He doesn't sit there shooting fireballs out of his hand. And that's exactly what we have here. Someone shooting fireballs out of their hands. So I don't hate it. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it was bad. I'm not like, damn it, why is she shooting fireballs? But I did think it was jarring. I did think it was a little A Song of Ice and Fire. I thought it was a little too far afield. It was a little too Hollywood. But it doesn't ruin anything for me. It's just another change that, whatever. The scene was still good. I still like that they did this. I still like that this scene is happening. I like this plot line. It's very mysterious. But I have a few other small complaints with it, but they're small, and it's not important to complain. I prefer to highlight the good things. Well, what did you, Sean? I'm a lot more interested in your thoughts because this was, like you said, it was like, whoa, what is all this that's happening? Holy crap!
Generally speaking, I will say that I prefer more realism.
Yeah.
I don't like as much fantasy. One thing I like about Gandalf in Lord of the Rings, in fact, is that sometimes his magic seems kind of, I don't know what the word, ambiguous. You know, like maybe it's not really magic, maybe it's just tricks, maybe it's just smarter, maybe no, but some of the things are pretty definitely magical, but it's still kind of vague and ambiguous.
Like what Melisandre said. Most of her stuff is tricks. She's got real magic, but she's using tricks to enhance it.
And I have even wondered how much control she really even has over her power. The difference between having a vision that something is going to happen versus causing something to happen. You know, certainly magical to have a vision of the future, but not as powerful as being able to cause the future. You know, also how much she even understands the vision. You know, or how true the vision is. We don't know these things. So I like for the power to be more vague, and I think so far the most definitive magical thing that's happened. Let me back up a little. The most fantastic thing that's happened has been the zombies and the White Walkers and whatnot, right?
Yeah,
I think, and
so.
dragons.
And the dragons.
That's
sure.
all pretty fantastic. But
and the birth shadow, I suppose.
That's the one I was going to say was the most magical. I don't know exactly. I'm kind of thinking out loud right now. I haven't defined these terms exactly, but I think of something fantastic as something that doesn't exist in the real world, but can exist with consistency in a quote-unquote fantasy world. But something magical is something that, I don't know, again, I don't know quite the point I'm trying to make here, but I'm going to say it's something that's less predictable, less consistent, less definable. You know what I mean? And a lot of times my problems with things like that are because I can't help but wonder, if you could do that, then couldn't you also do X, Y, Z? Why don't you do X, Y, Z?
Exactly.
It's not consistent with the rest of the world once you have that sort of power. And so it
opens up too much of possibilities. You want it to be a little more narrow.
So right off the bat, we have skeletons coming out of the earth. I'm like, whoa, that's pretty crazy. But it's not that much crazier than zombies we've already seen. The North seems to have more mystical stuff going on.
Yes.
Melisandre summoned this shadow spirit even. Okay, so fantasy's already there. But Melisandre's power seems limited and ambiguous, right?
Yes.
And these zombies seem in line with... Skeletons seem in line with zombies already there. So, no big problem so far. But then when the fireballs start coming, like, okay, wow, this is some straight up magic. Which I'm kind of shaky on. I will say I was still excited. This is the type of thing that I would not like and I would complain about, but I was still excited. I was still pretty drawn in and excited about all this.
Yeah.
Part of it, I think, is because they made it be real danger. A lot of times when the zombies come, the good guys just swing their swords around and all the zombies are dead. I'm like, all right, so the zombies aren't really that dangerous anyway.
Yeah.
But Jojen gets killed here. Hodor's getting smashed in the head. I'm worried about Bran. I'm like, well, this is serious.
Yeah.
You know? Another little note that I can make, it's possible that wasn't straight up magic. Those might be some sort of primitive grenade. There might be some sort of fuse, some sort of explosive, some sort of chemistry, some sort of thing some potion.
Maybe
that
she's
Melisandre...
only using some sort of power to ignite it, and there's some sort of fuel.
Yeah, some kind of ball of
I saw it as a fireball,
and,
but I accept that this as a theory. I accept this theory as possible. Yeah.
And that would help me be less concerned. I don't know where things are going, but if this child character, did they give her a name?
No, but her name is Leaf. She's
Leaf?
cast with the
Okay.
name as Leaf. Yeah.
If Leaf joins with them, and for all I know, Bran's about to be like imprisoned in this tree, you know. But maybe they're about to head out on more adventures with Leaf, and if Leaf is around with them all the time and battles come up and Leaf doesn't just instantly start throwing fireballs at all the bad guys, I'm like, all right, well, why aren't you doing?
Yeah, why aren't you shooting fireballs?
But if it's because there are these pouches and she only has 6 of them and she needs all these resources to make more, and once they leave the tree, she can't do it again. All right, so then I think that's more manageable fantasy. Does that make sense? And I hope it goes that route.
and it's worth pointing out, too, that she was almost more concerned with blowing up Jojen's body than she was with making sure all those zombies were killed.
That's true, yeah.
She fired past several of them to make sure his body was burned, to make sure he didn't come back as a white.
She might have also known if they could just outrun the zombies to get in. Not that she's not concerned about saving his soul
she knew
or
that
whatever.
She knew that once they're inside there, they're safe.
Yeah, they just need to outrun them, and they're about to. So
to address something you said before about how it's nice to have sorcery and magic be kind of uncertain. I can't remember which character says it in the books, but it's basically George explaining how magic works in his world through a character, and he says that sorcery is like a sword without a hilt. It's powerful and
that's
strong
really
and
good.
sharp and deadly, but you can't really control it without hurting yourself
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
It's really hard to like manage it effectively. That's a great analogy, and it goes to show. And it's shown a bit better in the books is how the cost of some of these things. I'll give an example. Melisandre does the shadow thing twice in the books.
Okay.
To this point, I'm not saying whether she ever does it again or doesn't, but to this point in the book, she's done it twice. One is the one we've all seen, which is to kill Renly. The other is to get into Storm's End, because the castle Castellan was not allowing them to get into Storm's End. He was holding them back, and that was delaying Stannis' attack on King's Landing, which was important. He wanted to take advantage of the situation, attack King's Landing as soon as possible. But this stubborn Castellan was like, no, I'm not yielding. I don't believe Renly's dead, and I'm not going to give you this boy Edric Storm that Gendry is playing the double role of that we explained earlier. Because the Castellan believed that this boy Edric Storm, that Stannis was going to sacrifice him to Melisandre. So they ended up sending a shadow in to kill this man, and the new commander, the new Castellan, opened the gates and let them in. Surrendered peaceably and was pardoned. Well, Stannis very subtly looks older and weaker, like something's happened to him, like his life force has been drained. And the implication is that they're creating these babies by having sex, but it's taking something out of him.
It's draining some of his life force.
Yeah, and so she can't just keep doing it.
Some of his integrity.
Yeah,
connected to his life force.
Right.
You know, like,
so it's not clear.
It is. This is like a vague thought that I'm having. I don't know if George would look at it this way, or if anyone would, but on some level, you can kind of advance yourself in life. Get a little like leap ahead if you want to sacrifice some of yourself, your integrity. If you steal, you know, if you lie, these can like inch you forward in life, get you extra money or position or whatever, but at the expense of who you are or want to be or should be or think you are or whatever, you know. And maybe you see that play out in a more real way with quote unquote magic.
I mean, you pretty much nailed it. That's exactly it. Stannis is a merciful, not merciful. He's a just man. He follows the law, but he also believes the ends justify the means. And he's doing some dark stuff to justify those means. If he's sending shadows after people and doing all these other things, potentially burning people and the leeches stuff and all this like assassinations and things that are not really the hallmark of a just king. But he believes the law comes before justice, and in certain ways, it's kind of an awkward thing to say, that he thinks that following the law is more important than adhering to perfect justice. And his law, according to the law, he's king, and he's got to do what it takes to make that happen.
Yeah. I feel like on a certain level, Stannis, I feel like sometimes the law is more important to him than justice, but sometimes justice more than law. And I think I've talked before about it's hard to peg him sometimes. And I think on some level it might be because I think in a lot of ways there's a lot of parallels to him and Tywin. Tywin talked about, justice, Tommen, sure, that's a good one. But strength, but wisdom, you got to know when to be just, when to move for power, when, the right action at the right moment. Not necessarily to be a good person to run a kingdom. You know what I mean? It's a different thing, and I wonder, that's kind of how I see Stannis, a lot like Tywin. Like, I don't know if he's necessarily a good guy or not. I find myself rooting for him, but I think that and I don't necessarily even think he's making the correct decisions all the time, not necessarily wrong, but I think much like Tywin, he's trying to make the correct decision. Sometimes it might be illegal. Sometimes it might be unjust. But for some bigger picture, his position in the world, the safety of the kingdom, whatever it is, he's making decisions based on that.
Yeah. So getting back to the Three-Eyed Raven, what did you think of the reveal of this character? What do you think about him in general? What do you think his deal is? What do you think he means by "I've been watching you since you were kids"? Like, that's kind of a common enough trope that we've seen in fantasy and sci-fi. All things like "I've been watching you since you were a kid." That it's been done, but that doesn't mean it's tired or that they're doing something cliche here. It does mean that we're supposed to think of similar situations, perhaps, but that could just be a setup, because George often likes to set us up with things that maybe seem normal and predictable from to use conventions, and then he subverts them. So
for sure.
I don't expect that this will go that whole standard I'm going to teach you everything I know. Then you're going to be this great, powerful wizard type character that is equipped to fight the White Walkers or whatever. I wouldn't expect it to go that way. I don't think that you expect that either.
If anything, I'm not quite sure what I expect. I have this is a lot of new stuff to take in with a lot of fantasy elements. I'm not sure where it could be going.
Yeah, fantasy really opens it up.
But I don't. If anything, I expect him to be sent out with no training. It's like, you need to go back right now and to find your brother. You know, I don't expect him to hang around and train up. I expect him to like continue being under-resourced.
He does say that the hour is late. You know.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and in fact, I haven't thought about it too much till just now. But in general, it's making me another thought I had a minute ago. You know, I gotta say, one reason I like these podcasts is because I think of new stuff in the middle of them. I have things that I have thought about before and want to say, but new things come to my brain still. We do it so quickly after the show, too. It's still all kind of settling in my mind.
Yeah.
I think of A Song of Fire and Ice. I've said this before. I think John is safe and Danny is safe because they're part of this long-term, plot line coming together. I feel like generally as viewers, what's happening is we're seeing what's going to appear petty at the end. These maneuverings for power in King's Landing, because what really matters is Dany and her dragons and Jon and these zombies, But maybe it's Bran and Melisandre, or Bran and Stannis. I'm not so sure who I for. Maybe it's all or both or none, But yeah, I suppose
little
Bran.
Bits of all. Take your pick.
The thing is, you kind of see or have been seeing from the beginning where things are going with Jon. He's sent up to the north on his own path, and we see first seen, in the books too, right? Is that there really are zombies? It really is a thing,
Yeah.
And so eventually Jon is gonna see it. They're gonna come. It's gonna be a real threat, and there really are dragons. Dany really is raising an army, and that's been going on from the beginning of the story. But Bran is taking a little longer to develop to what's going on with him. And there doesn't seem to be a particular path to where it's leading, maybe vaguely I can guess that he's going to stop the White Walkers or something like that. We even saw a vision of the White Walkers and certainly presented ominously, but I don't know if those White Walkers, do they have like this, are they like sitting around they're Stonehenge, like, oh man, I can't wait till we take over Westeros. What is there? Do they really do they need more wheat or something? Like, what is their plan? Do they have like some ultimate motivation to conquer the world? If so, maybe that is, and maybe Bran's there to stop it. But I'm not sure where things are going with Bran. I'm not sure what to expect. I don't know. Why has this character been watching them?
And what else has he been watching?
Yeah, or maybe he has been watching other people,
And what do you think of that line, his final line? You'll never walk again, but you will fly. How do you interpret that?
Well, I think that Bran, I've thought about this in the past already. I think that they've set up for him to ride a dragon. There are 3 dragons. 3 dragons originally invaded Westeros with dragon riders, so Dany, you think's gonna ride one. Who else? At a point, I could have imagined maybe Dany, Jorah, and I don't even know, Bannister. I don't remember what point I was thinking it might be. I don't know how much we've talked about the theories or how well known it is that Jon Snow is.
That's
who he
it's
really
fairly
is.
Well known.
But
yeah.
if he's Targaryen and I feel like they're setting that up. Jon maybe could ride a dragon. And I feel like they've set it up with Bran because Tyrion gave him plans for a saddle, right? Yep. And if he can take over an animal or even a person, he could probably take over a dragon.
Mm-hmm.
So that seems like a very, very long-term setup, but I feel like they gave us a little more definitive a clue there.
I'm glad you caught all that stuff. I wasn't sure if I'd have to nudge you in the right direction towards some of those things or not.
One of the things I did think there, though, that was I liked it quite a bit. All this epicness. We're seeing zombies, and Bran's life has been threatened so many times, and visions of the future and elsewhere, and his friend was just killed, and they're got beyond the wall. Like, just the adventure of a lifetime, even for other characters on adventures too, who are more equipped and experienced in life. They're still on the adventure of their life,
Yep.
And for Bran, this little boy, especially as I pointed out before, it's sort of like what he wanted. You know, his dreams. He wants these stories of scariness. Like, here you go, Bran. That's what you want. You know,
You're in one.
but he's still thinking small. He's like, I'm gonna give you what you lost. You're gonna help me walk again? Like, that's it. Now, again, it's understandable.
Yeah, he's
I
a
imagine if I
10-year-old
lost
kid
my
or whatever.
legs, even if dragons were real, I still want my legs back. You know what I mean? But Bran is thinking small, and I have an idea that there's something much bigger than him walking again. You know?
Yep. Good job. Okay, good job. Good analysis there. One other thing that's not clear to me, I wanted to mention, and I don't know how they're planning on handling it. The three-eyed raven, whether or not he's, you know, in the books he's portrayed as basically being part of the tree. It's like growing out of him, growing through him, and he looks pretty frightening to Bran. In fact, the whole cave is kind of frightening. There's skulls everywhere. What the hell is up with that? He talks about how he's like friendly. I'm here to like educate you or teach you, and it's important at what you're doing. And he seems to be against the White Walkers. He's killing zombies, or is with somebody that's killing zombies. Why the hell are all these skulls around? Like they look like human skulls. Yeah. So that's really kind of ominous, and it's supposed to be a little scary. And it's this typical quote unquote Song of Ice and Fire. Even the good stuff has some dark to it.
I wonder if he's maybe some sort of spirit and has taken the form of humans, but eventually the human form dies and the bones are left behind and his spirit continues on.
Yeah, these
to
could
a
be,
raven.
Are these other versions of like his predecessors that were there? Are those his bones of those people?
I definitely wondered. I definitely like, those bones all over. What is this place? Where like
yeah, right. And also, so I wish they had just slight complaint. I wish they had made it more clear that he's part of the tree, that he's embedded in it. That said, maybe he's not. Maybe he's mobile somehow. Maybe he can get up and walk around. I don't know. It
didn't seem like he could get up and walk around, but it also didn't seem like he was grown into it. They didn't really show his legs.
Yeah,
he was kind of high up.
He was.
It seemed like too high to just like step off a chair. Yeah. It was definitely mystical.
Yeah, very mystical. Probably, like you said, the most overt mystical thing besides dragons being born and shadows being born, things like that. So definitely wide open plot line now. Very wide, probably the most wide open plot line. Anything can happen when you like you said, when you involve magic. Just so many things can happen. So let us move on. I think that's about all we have for Bran and the fireballs and the three-eyed raven for now. Certainly the children of the forest existing at all is a huge reveal. There's not many of them left apparently, but there's at least a few. I don't know how many more there'll be, but that's certainly a situation that is developing and very important.
You know, that line of giants from thousands of years ago, the children of the forest would be ancient to them.
Potentially. Right? Well, it's said, this is something that they carried over to the show. I assume it's still true since the giants are so old. The children and the giants were... there's a quote from Leaf in the book that says, the giants are almost all dead. They who are our bane and our brothers. So I believe that they're contemporaries and that they were at war sometimes, but that in this whole struggle against the White Walkers, or if that's indeed what's happening, they're sort of allies. And they're sort of allies in that they're both pushed to the side by mankind. Mankind's development and their spread has kind of made them obsolete. Both them and the giants, the children and the giants. So, in a sense, the first men are the true children. The children, another reference to the episode title. How about that? So, shall we move on to Arya, Brienne, Sandor, Podrick?
Yeah. This was supposed to be so awesome. I was so wanting for this reuniting to happen, and as it was unfolding, I started to realize it's probably not going to go the way I want.
Yeah, there was real mixed. I saw real mixed feelings about this. There were some. I was looking at some of the reactions on Twitter, and during the episode and after, but during the episode, it was funny to see on my screen at the same time, I saw someone cheering for the possibility of this fight, and someone else cheering or hoping for the possibility that they realize that they're wanting the same goal. That they have the same goal. They want to protect
Yeah.
Arya. Like, help each other, talk it out, don't fight, no. And then someone else, like I said, so it's this contrast of work it out, help each other, and someone else like, oh God, Sandor versus the Brienne, that's awesome. I got to see that fight. It was an awesome fight, but yeah, it is kind of sad.
Yeah, I wanted so bad for them. Yeah, like you said, just to realize they both fundamentally want the same thing. They're, I guess one, it's probably too hopeful, too bright for like everyone to just be happy. Oh no, Sandor and Arya are happy now.
Yeah.
Now that Brienne found them. But
You can.
But I wish that they maybe could have. I wish that I felt like as it was happening and it seemed like it was coming to fisticuffs. Bran like started to draw a sword. She's realizing that the Lannister gold is gonna not look good.
Mm-hmm.
And you see Arya. At first, she's warming up to this woman fighter. Oh, but wait a minute, Lannister.
Yeah.
And
Podrick says, "That's the Hound. That's Sandor Clegane," and the music starts.
Yeah,
the dark
yeah.
music, and Brienne's facial expression changes, and she's like, "Uh-oh."
Yeah. And I was like, oh, but I still had this hope, that Bran would just back down. If she's just like, okay, fine, you take her. And if she just waits, you still got Sansa to find. Trail behind. Let Arya warm up to you more. Arya, say something. Arya, speak up. Don't let this happen. Like, and I did the whole way. I kept like thinking of the ways that this could turn out fine, and then it got a little bit worse. Like, oh no, still, because this could have, and it got a little bit worse. And I'm like, oh, now it's just, oh no. Oh, stop. This is not gonna, one of them's gonna die.
Yeah.
Are they both gonna die? I thought they might both die, but I didn't know what I wanted to happen there. Generally speaking, Sandor, I've said, I think he's one of my top 2 or 3 favorite characters, especially non-perspective characters. He's probably my top 1 or 2.
And he lays it out. I love how he lays it out to her. Like, look, where is safety for her? Like, he's got that whole like truthful cynicism.
Yeah. He's already gone through this. Like, I've already gone through this. What do you think you're gonna do here? And part of me, Brienne still has her oath. Jaime made the same argument. Like, what do you want to do? I'm like, fine, go take your oath keeper and play your game. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and she's trying. She's still trying, and you want to respect her for it. But you also can't help but realize what Sandor already knows is that it's hopeless. What are you gonna do? There's nothing to do. I'm already doing whatever it is you think you're gonna do. I'm already doing it. You know what I mean? And you're just naive. She's just naive, and in a way, she is naive. But in another way, you want to root for naivete. You want these naive, quote unquote, naivete.
She's naive in sort of good ways.
They're the
like,
good ones.
Yeah, she's naive about honor and how people are and all that.
And it was so bittersweet. This scene. It was so.
And she drew first. She drew her sword first. And it's almost like, to me, it's interesting. It's a bit of a moral quandary. It's almost like despite Arya saying she didn't want to go with her, despite Sandor being like, "Look, you're not capable," she still put her vow above Arya's wishes and what's probably better for Arya. And I think that's an interesting.
She still had the active goal. You know what I mean? Sandor didn't have an active goal. He just wants to go on his way. And if you try to fight me, I'm going to kill you. She had an active goal.
Well, he gets 10 miles that way. Just get out of here.
Yeah.
Move on. We don't have to fight. Brienne sort of is almost the one that forced the issue. And I think that if she hadn't drawn her sword, Sandor would have been fine to let her go, and they just would have parted. But Brienne, almost no one, if no one at all, takes vows as seriously as Brienne. So she was committed, I think, and it's too bad. It shows you what vows can do to you. It shows you what taking a vow can mean if you follow it all the way through. It puts you in some sticky situations. We've seen that with the Night's Watch. We've seen that with the King's Guard. We've seen that with all sorts of things. Duty and love again, like last episode. These things really come up.
There's a little thing that happened in this scene that I really appreciated. Arya's hair was poorly kept. It was unevenly cut. Her face was dirty and maybe even bruised. I really love that they do that. I really bothers me when everyone's clean shaven and pretty haired up.
Makeup on and all that. Yeah.
Especially
so common in movies and TV shows.
It's a subtle thing, but I really appreciate it. It even more. I feel like even characters in King's Landing probably shouldn't be as well kept as they are.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to be picky about it. But the characters that are like tromping through the wilderness, they need to be dirty and messy and disheveled. And I'm glad that she was.
Yeah, it's good that they go through to take those extra steps to be realistic. So this is what we were talking about. Anyone who watched our our spoiler video for the last episode, we talked about how they submitted some Emmy things for, and this whole thing with Sandor's leg and his ear. That was part of the costume Emmy stuff, as well as the Three-Eyed Raven and the roots and all that. So that's what we were talking about. The ear being bitten off. We knew this battle was coming. It was almost.
You knew this was coming and didn't tell me.
Well, it's funny. We knew it was coming not because it's not in the books. There's no Brienne Sandor fight
really?
in the books. We did not know. We only knew it was coming because earlier in the season, Brienne was asked in an interview, "What's the weirdest thing you had to do in the season? What's the strangest thing?" And she talked about. She's like, I had to bite someone's ear off. And we thought it was because she does bite someone's ear off in the books. But that character hasn't been in the books at all. And it was already past the point where that character would exist. We're like, well, interesting. Who's that going to be? And by the time we're like, it still hasn't happened yet. So episode 10's about to happen. We're like, oh. And we saw the Emmy costume stuff. And it's like, we knew that Sandor was going to have an ear thing, an ear wound. And we're like, oh. So we knew Brienne and Sandor were going to fight. Not because it's in the books, but because of, putting two and two together from interview stuff and these offline stuff. So that was like, uh-oh.
I don't know what I thought or what I wanted, but I guess I felt kind of like the way Arya and Sandor show up at the Eyrie, like, oh, they're gonna meet up with Sansa. No, they just come and go. And a couple times the characters, Bran and Jon were right there and just went, and I thought maybe they'll be just go their separate ways, just go put the sword back, don't. And now, oh man.
So Arya doesn't finish Sandor off. She takes his money or their money. And apparently later uses it to buy a horse because she shows up on a horse later.
Yeah.
But he's yelling out for her to kill her, and he doesn't handle it properly. Arya is too smart for this. He's trying to get her to kill him by saying things that will hurt her.
To get her riled up. To get mad at him.
But this is more like, if you know Arya, this is more likely to have the opposite effect. She knows that dying slowly is more a punishment than being killed. So he should have been nice to her. If he wanted her to kill her, he should have said, "Hey, please kill me."
This is something
he handled it badly.
This is something I did want to ask, by the way. We're getting this from Arya's perspective in the book.
Yeah.
It wasn't clear to me the way she sort of just sat by and he told his stories and made his pleas and she was almost just silent, observing. I couldn't quite decide what was going on in her mind. I couldn't decide if she wanted to make him suffer, or if she was confused about what to do, or if she didn't believe he really wanted him to do it. I was very intrigued and curious about what was going on in her mind. What was going on in her mind in the books?
She's mostly thinking that he didn't deserve mercy, that he wasn't she had kind of taken him off her list. But she didn't like him. She didn't like him either. Yeah. She thought she sort of respected him, and he's a companion. He's a guy to be with.
Sort of liking him isn't the same as wanting to kill him or not wanting
to
kill him.
And she's not really at this point. She's not really capable of liking anybody.
Yeah.
She's really just dark-hearted at this point. Not that she's evil, but she is. Her path has been so dark. Not that she's the dark one, but that everything that's happened to her has just made her into like.
Not that she isn't dark either.
Not that she's got some dark.
Sitting there watching him die, not
letting him suffer.
Yeah. I suppose it would have been dark to put. Like, part of me felt like, wow, Arya is so cruel. But then I think, I don't know if I could just kill someone. It's like a debate in the world when someone's on a machine to unplug it or not. Like, it's not like I don't think it's like this default auto that she should have killed him and it's cruel for her not to. And I think, but the fact that I have to remind myself of that for this little girl, it's pretty dark, man.
Yeah. And she isn't the other thing is that she's not swayed by anything. She's not swayed by his entreaties. She's not swayed by any sense of duty. She's her own person. I think that's really important. She's really strong. She's been affected so much. She's had so many traumatic things happen to her, but she's got a lot of inner strength. Contrast to someone like, say, Viserys, who his situation just crushed him and made him, any sort of inner weakness he had turned him insane, and he couldn't handle it. He became bitter and said really stupid things and did just like insane, ludicrous things, like pulls his sword out in a place where you're not supposed to pull your sword out. All the Dothraki are going to kill him, of course, and acting like he can kill Jaime in single combat eventually, and he's just like, he's insane. His level of mental toughness is tiny. Arya's is huge. Instead of, like, of course she's dealt with so much. Of course she's going to be affected by it. But it's almost like she gains strength from it.
You know who else has a lot of mental toughness is Jaina Slint.
Nice.
So where do we go after this?
So now we go to Tyrion. We're going to come back to Arya,
Jamie,
but we have Tyrion being saved, and a whole lot of stuff happens here. We've got about a half hour. We've got about a half hour left, so we got to get through this scene, and we got to get through Arya, and that's about it. So we don't have a whole lot, but we do. This scene. This is an awful lot that happens here. So let's get on it. Tyrion, of course, immediately it kind of happens in a hurry. Tyrion's lying there. He's kind of waiting to die. Jaime bursts in. He's like, "All right, let's get it over with. You know, you son of a whore." And is that any way to speak to about your mother or about our mother? And Jaime, this scene involves skipping a piece of plot that was important to a lot of book readers, and I can understand why they didn't do it. I can see why it'd be nice, but we'll talk about that more in the spoiler stuff, especially because we don't have a lot of time. Like I said, I can understand why they didn't do it. I'll explain that later, why I feel that way. But I do think it would have been cool if they could have done it. Anyway, so they have their moment, their parting moment. They realize they might not see each other again because obviously Tyrion has to flee. He can't come back to King's Landing.
Yeah.
Of course, Jaime doesn't realize what is the other thing that's going to happen. He thinks he's just freeing his brother. He doesn't realize it's also going to lead to his own father being
Tyrion knows
killed.
his way around these back catacombs.
He does, because he lived in the Tower of the Hand. He lived in Tywin's chambers. He knows.
And was sneaking Shay around.
Mm-hmm.
And
So Jaime, that's an interesting side effect of all this, is Jaime is going to have to deal with his own feelings about being a part of this. He's the one who let Tyrion free, and Tyrion's the one who killed their father. So now Jaime has to... He's not going to admit it, I don't think. He's not going to be like, that was my fault.
Yeah.
But he is going to have to deal with that. And internally, that's going to... He doesn't... It's not like... all of his kids have trouble with him, Tywin. But it's not like they just hate him. It's not like they have simple, he's dead. Okay, good.
I will say, though, I hadn't thought about it until you said it earlier, that it's sort of like Jaime took a page out of Cersei's book. He chose Tyrion, not Tywin.
That's right.
And that doesn't mean he wants Tywin to die, but he was choosing Tyrion there. So I was kind of glad for it.
The other thing, of course, we see here is that Varys is part of this. Now, it's unclear how...
I was glad to see that also.
It's unclear at this point what Jaime did, whether Jaime forced Varys to do this, whether he... Because in the book, that is what happens. Jaime sort of forces Varys into helping. He's like, you're going to help me with this. And Varys is like, yeah, but if I let Tyrion out, it's going to reflect on me. Like, they're going to ask questions of me, right? And Jaime's like, I don't care.
You have to do it anyway.
I don't care about you. We're letting Tyrion out. That's who I care about, So Tyrion, of course, and Tyrion, of course, detours, heads into his old chambers, and there he sees Shay lying there in bed. And you can see, once again, because he's, partly we can do this because Peter Dinklage is such a great actor, he's able to show just how horrified he is, how betrayed he feels, and just his feelings in general. Now, this is where it gets to be a bit of a moral quandary. For some people, this is a moral quandary. I don't think it's a moral quandary at all. It could have been a moral quandary. The fact is, Tyrion's standing there, she pulls a knife on him. She goes for him. She's going to kill him. He doesn't have time to sit there and go, well, you don't deserve death. You betrayed me, but, maybe you deserve to live. She tries to kill him. So maybe he doesn't have to kill her. Maybe he can knock her unconscious or something, but she comes at him with a knife.
She didn't exactly come at him.
Okay, she pulled the knife.
Yeah, I thought about this scene a good bit, and I don't know how it went down in the books.
I felt like she was going for him, but maybe not.
I paid close attention to this. I even rewound and watched it a third time. They're both sort of stunned in deer in the headlights. And I think that she, on some, I don't know if realizes is quite the right word, but it's reasonable for her to realize or to believe that she's in danger.
Yeah.
Tyrion has every reason to be upset with her. He's supposed to be in jail, and instead he's right there. You can understand how she might feel threatened, even if he's not actively doing something.
He's not holding a weapon,
right?
But yeah.
But he, in the middle of the night, showed up in a room. He's supposed to be in jail, and he's got every reason to be mad at her. So she grabs a knife, but she's still laying on the bed.
Yeah, he kind of jumps
multiple feet away from her.
It's the same thing. Like, he's also...
And at the moment that she grabs the knife, I can imagine he might feel threatened.
Right.
The fact that she testified against him like that, she's mad enough to sentence him to death. She might be mad enough to kill him. And
she's clearly...
He is in her chamber. He's supposed to die.
Quote, unquote, in bed with her father.
And and he can also... he might get her just yelling, help! Tyrion could get him, So I can imagine both of them on some level are acting defensively.
Yes. Which is why I think it's less of a moral quandary, because he has,
Right.
whether or not he's right that she's going to try, that she's pulling that knife to attack him, it's reasonable to think.
Yeah, on some level, he's acting in self-defense.
It becomes a life or death struggle.
Right. I didn't come away from this scene thinking that Tyrion murdered Shay in order to get revenge.
Right.
I think that he killed Shay and on some level wanted revenge, but on some level was doing it to preserve his safety.
Self-defense,
and on
yes.
some level was guilty, sad, upset, disappointed. I think there's more negative things that Tyrion feels about this than positive. I don't think he's like, I finally killed that bitch. I think he's like,
Yeah.
I can't believe I had to kill her. How am I going to live
He
my
said,
life,
I'm sorry,
you know?
right afterwards. He was
Yeah,
like, I mean, it was
exactly,
kind of
yeah.
like a weak, pathetic, I don't mean like bad acting or anything. Like, it's just like, it shows how broken down he was.
He was
at that point.
experiencing pity or whatever. You know?
And it's some of it's quickly turning into self-pity. I think he realizes that he did something that is going to haunt him for a long time. And then he goes and does something else that's going to haunt him for a long time.
And I'll tell you, I was more surprised. I wasn't so surprised that Shay was there. It's not like I expected her to be there. But to me, the surprising thing was that Tywin would be sleeping with her. Not her, but a whore. You know what I mean? I feel like he's above all that. You know what I mean? And
it shows that he's a bit of a hypocrite. And that this is
Yeah.
part of why Tyrion was... He apologizes to Shay's corpse, and then he gets that look in his eyes like, you motherfucker. You know, he's so mad. He realizes it's like, you're a hypocrite, too. On top of everything, you're a fucking hypocrite. So it kind of builds up why Tyrion is so angry and how he's like, feels so betrayed.
He's got a million reasons to be angry.
Everyone has betrayed him,
reasons to
except
be
for
angry.
his brother, thankfully.
Yeah. And I still feel like Shay was there. I don't think Shay was there because she loved Tywin or to get revenge on Tyrion or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I could be wrong, who knows, but I just sort of assume she had to be. Probably the same reason she testified against him. She probably, just like Tyrion on some level, did want revenge, was mad at him, but on some other level, they probably said, hey Shay, you can be wealthy and hook up with the hand of the king and not be killed if you testify against Tyrion. Or we could slowly torture you to death and everyone that you know and love. And she's like, okay, fine, I'll sleep with Tywin and testify against Tyrion. Fuck Tyrion anyway.
It's rock and a hard place. She didn't really have a middle choice there. And you're right, she's not a person with power of her own. She can only acquire power by doing favors for other people in power. And this is her kind of limited opportunity to do something that matters. Unfortunately, it means that she has to go against someone that she was in love with. But as he had already cast her aside, it's probably a bit easier for her to make that decision.
I was surprised this scene happened, honestly. And I even expected when I asked her, did that happen in the books? I thought, no, it didn't happen in the books. I guess it happened in the books.
It did.
But I felt like if he had just gone straight to Tywin and none of that there was Shay, I wouldn't have been wondering, I wonder what's ever going to happen with Shay. Yeah, I wonder if Tywin ever said, I wouldn't have wondered, I wouldn't have felt like anything was missing. But I do suppose it does add an extra layer of justification for Tyrion, whether it's out of some jealousy over Shay or some realization of the hypocrisy of his dad or whatever combination.
It might reflect on him a bit too. Like Shay's body's going to be found in his chambers.
Yeah.
But time to reference a funny quote that was said a few episodes ago. Littlefinger, when talking about how people can die, he's like, you can die at any point. You can die blankety blank, or just on the chamber pot.
Yeah.
So us book readers caught that like, oh, nice little drop there, Peter. Nice little drop there, writers. We wanted to say something about that, and then you know why we were like...
That's when he was talking to Robin. Robin was worried.
All the different ways that Robin...
Don't worry about dying, worry about living.
Yeah, it was just, all the ways you can die.
Some people die in their chamber pot.
Yeah, yep, sure enough. And... It's the scene where he actually confronts. We can see, of course, why Tywin didn't hear any of this other stuff happening, because his quarters are large. Tyrion walks a long way to get to the chamber pot. I guess he figures out that that's where Tywin must be, and so it's very interesting. There's a lot of nuance in this death scene for Tywin. There's a lot of old grievances being aired, a lot of things that Tyrion's been upset with his whole life that are coming out, and he's kind of, for once, he's like, I've got the power now. He's like, you're a hypocrite. I've got the weapon pointed at you. You're going to listen to me. I'm going to tell you some things. And Tywin still kind of dominates it even. It just shows that he's like, I'm still your father. I'm still, like... I've still got the power here, despite everything.
I still perceive Tyrion as being pretty subdued there. Like, on
he
one hand, he did have the power and it did tell him off a little bit, but for the most part, he just stood there and let Tywin talk. And finally, when he started to say something, he didn't even speak up or kind of, he's like, no. It was almost under his breath. He's almost thinking to himself as much as telling Tywin off.
That's kind of what I mean. He had all the power, but he's still weak in the face of his father's domination. The fact that the way his father's dominated him his whole life, even when he's got the upper hand, he's got the weapon pointed at him, he's got evidence that his father's a hypocrite, he still kind of melts in his presence a bit. I think that's interesting.
I don't mean to disagree with you. I'm just saying I didn't perceive it that way. You read it from Tyrion's perspective.
Oh no, I'm not.
Right?
I don't think you are disagreeing with me. I'm saying I'm saying that Tywin still dominated him, even despite
I think that
Tyrion having
Tywin
the upper
dominated
hand.
there, but I didn't think it was so much because Tyrion was melting away. I felt like Tyrion was almost having a out of body experience.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Tyrion was just it's like he was just going through the motions of this. He couldn't believe it was happening. It's like, I guess it's just the slow mechanical way he loaded the next crossbow.
Yeah.
It's like he didn't even believe he was doing what he was doing.
That, by the way, is not in the book. He doesn't shoot him twice.
Oh, really?
He doesn't reload and fire again. They added that's an extra level of whoa. I was like, yeah.
I thought it was really
I was
good.
wondering why he was carrying the crank with him on the hall. I was like, is he not loaded yet? And then he's like, oh, he's going to fire again. Whoa.
Yeah.
That definitely makes it a bit more, a little darker. He sits there and reloads and fires again. He's like, I'm being thorough here.
Yeah, which is kind of the point I'm trying to make. I didn't feel like Tyrion was making this
conscious decision,
this calculated moment of wait a minute. I mean, I didn't feel like he was making this emotional, irrational, angry. Oh, I hate you! I'm gonna kill you. He was making a calculated, conscious. You know, he didn't need Tywin to say anything. He didn't need to say anything to Tywin. He's just going to kill him. Just going to kill you.
He might regret it later. He might think about it. His feelings might change later. He just had something traumatic happen. But at the moment, you're right. He's just he's out of his mind. He's just kind of, like you said, he's probably kind of dead. His emotions are probably kind of dead at that moment.
Yeah.
He's probably just, like you said, he's kind of he's a zombie of his own in a sense. And it's a bit like... I'm trying to think of a comparison, and I'm drawing a blank, but there's maybe a few other spots where people are so overwhelmed that they're kind of outside themselves. And maybe Jon earlier with Ygritte is a bit like that when she dies, and he's got this battle raging around him, but he can't make himself fight or do his duty. He's just got to cradle her.
Jon was almost like that when he went to see Mance, by the way.
Okay, you're right. You're right. That's true. But the actual moment of death, I think, is interesting. Some people didn't think necessarily that Tyrion had enough reason. Like, why is Tyrion so upset about his use of the word whore when Shae is such a betrayer in his mind to him? Why is that the thing that he's so upset about? Why did he fixate on his use of the word whore? Well, I don't think it's that simple. I don't think he's just fixating on the word whore. I think he's fixating on how his father doesn't take him seriously, and how his father has no regard for him. And this is what he brings up at first. This is one of the few complaints he gets. Like you said, he mostly just kind of lets Tywin talk and then just disagrees with him and says, no, holds the crossbow up. He's like, no, we're not going to go into your chambers and talk. We're going to stay here. And then Tywin says some more things. He brings up the point that, look, I'm your son, and you knowingly stood up in front of everyone and said I was guilty of this crime that I didn't commit. Like, forget the relationship with Shae. That should be a much bigger deal than anything. His own father, he's used to his father, betraying him, but not so like that. That's another level of lack of support and outright betrayal from his own father.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't. So like Cersei said, like, you clearly haven't chosen me as your son. You haven't chosen me to be in your family. You've tried to push me away. You've tried to kill me, and I'm not okay with that. Now it's time where we set that straight. And I thought that was pretty well done, even though I kind of see where people are coming from with the whole whore comment. But also, it's a whole Tywin doesn't take Tyrion seriously. He made the threat. He said, "Look, if you say whore again, I'm going to shoot you." Maybe that was a weird threat to make. Maybe it was a weird thing to kind of draw a line in the sand on. But he's mad about so many things. He's just.
I feel like he can draw a line in the sand on anything he wants.
Yeah.
I think he could just kill him for any.
Exactly.
He simply, just all by itself, sentencing him to death when he's not guilty. Just that and nothing else. That's enough to me. That's I think.
He walked into the room in the first place with the crossbow, intending to do something. He didn't.
Yeah,
that comment hadn't been made yet.
Yeah, I feel like Tyrion was just going to kill him no matter what.
Yeah.
And I feel like Tyrion is justified in killing him no matter what. And I feel like Tyrion didn't necessarily even care to have a conversation. But he was so lost in himself, he just let Tywin ramble on. Eventually, Tywin said something to get Tyrion's goat, which is pretty much what Tywin's trying to do, right? Tywin's trying to assert himself, trying to get control, trying to put that crossbow down.
Yeah, trying to take control, yes.
And Tyrion's like, no, it's not happening.
Not happening.
Just shut back
You're
up.
not
You
taking
say you're
control.
going to kill you. Okay, boom, I kill you. You know,
So he had to follow through his threat. He's like, look, you've
Yeah.
never taken me seriously, and in your final moment, you're going to take me seriously. You're
Yeah.
going to see that I mean what I say. And he did, ultimately. And Tywin is like shocked. He's like, you shot me.
he didn't think it was really going to happen. Yeah.
That's his reaction. Is like, you shot me. Like, I can't believe this happened.
In the same way he just couldn't believe that Cersei and Jaime were having an affair. He just couldn't believe that Tyrion would do this.
That's how strong his sense of willpower. That's how strong Tywin's willpower was, that he was able to lie to himself so thoroughly that he believed his own lies.
I have a key question I wanted to ask here.
Sure.
Tywin said, I'm not going to let my own son, I'm not going to let him paint chop, da 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 da. To being honest? Or was he just saying what he needed to say?
I believe he was. I believe he was
How?
being honest. I believe he was going to allow Tyrion to take the black.
I guess I was gonna say, how would that play out? Like, if he's already sentenced her to death and he kill him tomorrow, I guess he can still allow him to take the black. I wonder if Tyrion would have done it. I wonder if Tyrion would like, fine, go ahead, chop my head off. He would have called his bluff. Furthermore, what I wonder is if whether or not Tywin was being honest, how much his decision on that would be influenced by what Cersei just told him. I wonder if Tywin's like, before, maybe, yesterday, he was going to just have him put to death.
Now Tyrion's
But
his
now
own son,
he might, I'll let you. I wasn't going to let that happen.
It's definitely interesting to consider that in that whole light. In the books, like I said, there is no omission. There is no admission, rather, of the truth about Jaime and Cersei. So it's not possible to use that as a potential color to this scene. But it does apply in the show, and I do think that's a real interesting wrinkle. It's like, is he
gets killed before we can know,
right?
You know? But it's interesting to think about whether or not what would have happened. Would have Tyrion been killed? Would he have been led? How would Tywin have managed that?
Okay, so we only have a few minutes left, so let's get into these last few moments. First of all, we have Varys coming into the room saying, "What have you done?" Now, real interestingly, George, in an interview, we're going to talk about a little about this more in the spoiler stuff, but George recently in an interview wanted everyone to take note of Varys' role in all this. In all of this, set maybe his role in, leading Tyrion on a little bit, perhaps. Maybe some of this was not how he planned it, but partly how he planned it. So George wants us to think about that, even people who haven't read the books. So keep that in mind, folks. I won't go into too much detail with that, but we will talk about it a little more in the spoiler stuff, so we'll raise a few more questions and let you guys think about it more. We don't have answers.
I did think,
but
by the
we
way,
will raise more questions.
I did feel like Varys helping Tyrion was like dangerous. Varys didn't even want to lie for him before the trial, and now he's like, how is he not going to be implicated in all this? And it occurred to me like, well, now that he has testified against Tyrion in the trial, maybe he's got a little more defense. Maybe he won't be a suspect, but it seems like too much. And sure enough, I thought it was a good scene when he's like, all right, took care of that. Let's go back home. Oh, shit's hit the fan back home, huh?
The bells ring.
Cut, sent back there for Tyrion.
Those bells were ringing to toll Tywin's death. That was announcing Tywin's death, basically. And Varys is sitting there realizing, I can't go back there now. They're going to know. Yeah. They're going to know I had something to do with this. Of course they're going to suspect him. Even if he had nothing to do with it, they would have suspected him because the secret passageways were used. Tyrion's let out of jail. Jaime's not necessarily going to admit to it. Of course it's going to come. The questions are going to come to Varys. He's the master of whispers, and he realizes he's too smart. He knows that Cersei and other people maybe are going to just not let him just, oh, it wasn't you. Okay. You had nothing to do with it. Sure. He feels like he'll be scapegoated even if he's...
I wish we had more time because I can't. That's one of the big... I keep thinking about, well, is Cersei... How much power does Cersei have now? What's she going to do with it? Who's the new hand of the king going to be? Is Jaime going to step up in some way? My mind is just spinning on how things are going to play out now. And in fact, it's neat to think about this. Think of how many characters are one way or the other are leaving Westeros, right?
So
Varys and Tyrion, it seems like are.
And
Arya's about to. Sandor is dead. Jojen is dead. Tywin is dead. Like the number of characters in Westeros, just like a slew of them are gone.
Yep.
Where the characters in Essos are swelling. More and more people are showing up there.
It's really, yeah. It's the story is growing rather than shrinking. You'd think that eventually things are going to come together, and they're just
And
spreading
start
out even
tightening
more.
up with resolution, and
They're
then we're like getting
spreading out
more
more,
things
yeah.
that are going to need more.
No, and like you
resolution.
said, even Danny's plot is spread out a bit with more plot lines being added
Yeah.
with Grey Worm and Missandei on one level, and Jorah just
Jorah.
splitting off entirely, and
Even Dario's off on his own. Maybe he'll just come back and like, all right, city's safe now, But I can see how that might turn into a whole other thing.
yep.
Um,
So Varys camped out on the ship there as a funny final moment for him. He's just kind of sitting there like, oh well, I guess I'm headed across the narrow sea. Now it's important to remember from season 1 that he has a connection to Illyrio, the man who set up Dany's wedding in the first place. So that seems like a fair guesstimate for who he might contact.
was Illyrio the same go-between getting information from Jorah?
Yes. So that is a fairly likely destination for Varys. That's one of his important, if not his most important, contact overseas. To clarify, Illyrio lives in Pentos, which is kind of just due east of Dragonstone. It's one of the closest free cities. Braavos is pretty far away from that, and Slaver's Bay is even farther. It's really far away from that. So it's not like these characters are coming close to Dany, but they're closer than they were.
Yeah.
And who knows where they'll go next. So let's talk about Arya real quick. It's the final scene of the season, and she is, obviously, like I said before, she clearly has acquired a horse with the money she got from Sandor's body there. She gets on the ship, tries to talk her way into going north. The captain's like, no, we're not going north. We're going back to Braavos. And she's like, oh, Braavos. Well, I know something about Braavos. Pulls out the coin. The dude is just trying to get rid of her. He sees the coin, and he's like,
This changes everything.
heyo, where did you get that? He's like, that came from one of these people, one of these faceless men or whatever. How the hell did you get that? So he's like, takes it very seriously, and you get to see her sailing off into the distance. I was really hoping Gendry would see him on his rowboat, like, hey, there's Gendry. He's been rowing for a whole season. Kind of forgot about him, didn't you? But he's out there somewhere.
I forgot about him or Balon. We didn't get anything from any of the Boltons or the
Yeah, they wrapped that plot line up in
or
episode
the
8.
Greyjoys in this episode.
Yeah, that
Olenna's
wraps up
been
as
gone
well.
for a couple episodes.
Olenna went back
There's
to
so
Highgarden.
much stuff that I'm anticipating.
You talked about all these characters dying, but there's still a lot that we
there's
don't
still
even.
more that we haven't
Yeah.
didn't get touched on. Yeah.
Epic story is epic.
I wanted to say I like that bit there when they're sailing off. I'm assuming they're going to Braavos. That it starts off, that ship is sailing away, and Arya is like looking at the coast, as she leaves, and then pretty swiftly she turns, runs to the front of the ship, and starts looking to where she's headed.
Yeah.
I thought that was a good moment.
There's nothing but darkness in her past. There's nothing. She has bad memories and nothing. There's nothing to. Thinking about the past is not a good thing for Arya to do.
Yeah.
It's good for her to look to the future and to look at what's coming for her rather than where she's been, because that's a dark path. That's not gonna make her happy thinking about her past. She's got the future to think about, and what a future it is. I don't know what a future it is. What is it?
I've been
What
thinking
is her
about
future?
it for a year.
So it's good that you brought this up, Sean. That we don't have enough time maybe to talk about some things. Perhaps it'll be appropriate for us to do some sort of analysis for several months from now, or maybe just a month or two before the show comes back. Some thoughts. You'll have had a lot of time to think about things. We'll have some casting news. We'll have some things to talk about. I don't think we can just season 5, episode 1. That'll be the next time we talk about the TV show. I feel like at least once between now and the rest of the season, or between the start of season 5, we'll come back to the Iron Couch. We'll get a Shay in here. We'll get the three of us. We'll talk about some things. We'll make some predictions. You'll have had some time to think. You'll have some more ideas. There'll be news from the show. There'll be casting things. There'll be plenty to talk about. So I think we'll circle back and do an episode before the season starts.
Yeah, like tomorrow and the next day and the next day.
And of course,
the next day.
the spoiler episode coming out from Shay and I will be probably about a day after this one. This one should be up. Hopefully, y'all are listening to this late Monday. Sometimes YouTube doesn't cooperate the way we like it to. iTunes is almost always up right away, so look out for that. Any last thoughts, Sean?
No.
Well, thanks to everybody for listening. Thanks to everybody for following us during the TV season. I know some of you only are watching us for the TV season and some of our spoiler-free episodes. Well, we should have a few more of those coming out. We're sad to see the TV show end. That will mean less Sean or no Sean for a while, except for this other episode. So everyone, be sure to tell us how much you miss Sean. Send us your notes on Facebook, Twitter, Gmail, westeroshistory@gmail.com. Head to our website, historyofwesteros.com. Rate us on iTunes, rate us on YouTube. Thanks very much, everybody. We'll be seeing you soon with some history episodes. And of course, send us your feedback, things that you thought we missed. Because, like I said, we'll have a wrap up review, pre season 5 sort of episode, things you want to hear us talk about. Make sure you let us know. Valar Morghulis, everybody. Thanks a lot.